So you got yourself some molasses, but you're not entirely sure how to make a rum fermentation just yet. Let me go show you what I do. Hey everybody, Distiller Greyling here, one of your favorite home and hobby distillers. So today we are doing some molasses fermentation. Yes, I got here some Treacle 3 molasses. I like the Treacle 3 molasses because it gives me a bit more flavor. I know Treacle 1 will give you more yield, but for me it's my preference. I like the flavor, so I go with Treacle 3. So I did my calculations beforehand, my sugar calculations and my water to add calculations. Go check out this video where I explain all about the calculations that I use to dilute my molasses before my fermentation. So in here I've got my 1/3 water to add that I already heated up. You can see it's nice and hot. I'm happy with this. I will use this to do my initial dilution of the molasses, and it also helps to rinse out the last bit that's trapped inside the barrel itself. I'm not going to use this one. This is an empty one. The one I'm going to use is in here. So in here I've already preheated some water and placed the molasses itself in there to make sure that it's starting to get nice and hot and soft, so when I do start to pour it into the drum where I'm going to do my fermentation, it's nice and loose and it's not that thick and sticky. It's still going to be sticky, it's still going to take some time to get it out there, but no worries, I am prepared for that. So yeah, let's get things going. Got my trusty Adobe no rinse sanitizer again. I'm going to pour in there some, rinse it out, leave it there to contact a bit to make sure that it's nice and sanitized. I like this one because you don't have to worry to re-rinse it again. It can be contact with it, a smaller bit of amount can be in your fermentation. It will not affect it. As long as there's contact with your surface that you want to clean, it will make sure that there's no germs and no funny business in your fermentation. I just give it a nice splash. And I will also shake the drum itself. Before you add anything to your drum, whether you're going to start your fermentation or not, make sure your tap is closed. At this moment I can see it's open, so if I'm going to make a nice shake, most of it will probably leak out there, and that's not what I want at the moment. So yes, make sure your taps are closed. Obviously on top there is some holes where the bubbler and my aquarium heater will go in. I will just try and shake it so it doesn't splash out there as well. As you can see, got it splashed nicely on the lid. Yes, I'm in the garden, so I can just drip it there, that's no problem. But I want to leave as much as I can also on it to make sure that it gets nicely sanitized as well. In here, all these that are left, I'm just going to pour it straight into the garden and then leave it to air dry a bit. So now that I've got my drum sanitized and ready, I'm going to start to get my molasses out. I know the lid is going to be a bit sticky. It has been transported, there might be some molasses on the lid itself, but I have got my trusty old rubber sealer. It works wonders. I'm going to grip that lid and get it open. But first I need to get it out. "35 kgs is a bit heavier than I always expected, but don't worry, I have it out. I see there's some water in the pocket here on the side. That pocket on the side is actually where the data sheet itself came in. That's what I use for my sugar calculations to make sure that I've got the fermentations and the total brick and the total fermented bricks right, so that I know exactly how much water I need to add for my fermentation. Before you attempt to remove your lid, just make sure the seal is broken. That will ease with the initial opening of the molasses container. Make sure now the seal is definitely loose. So let me attempt to open this lid. There we go. Nice and easy. Just that initial sweet smell that comes through. Lovely. Yes, it definitely has got a bit of molasses on it, but it's not too bad. So let me get my drum ready, and then we'll start to get this molasses out of this holder here into our main drum. So heating my molasses beforehand to make it nice and loose. I got that advice actually from a Facebook fan, so thank you very much, guys. I love the comments you leave me, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. I just know that you guys are there. You're still helping me as well as I'm helping you. This whole home and hobby has taught me a lot of things, and one of the things that I definitely have learned is to have that community, to have that contact with other like-minded people that also enjoys this hobby, and you share here and there advice. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Alright, I'm not sure how much you can see, but it's definitely coming out. I must say, it's definitely a bit looser. Definitely pouring much easier than I normally would. But yes, this is molasses is one of those bit time-consuming things. You will just take it easy, let it pour out. I might turn the drum or the container around so that it can get more air as well, so that it doesn't suck the vacuum like now. I can see it's quite bulging in, so I am gonna turn it a bit to see if I can get some air in here. Then hopefully it will also pour a bit easier as well. So we are getting there. I can definitely feel as the air gets sucked in. This is working a bit better. I just have to get my balancing act nicely here, because I don't want to tip the big blue drum, and I don't want the small blue container to slip and make a mess of everything. So yes, I'm quite gripping it to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. But so far so good. It's getting a bit more lighter so I can pick it up now. I don't know how much you guys can really see how it's coming out. It's like a nice thick maple syrup, honey-like viscosity. It definitely helps heating it up beforehand. As a home and hobby distiller, a water bath with warm water works wonders. Going over commercial, you get some nice pumps that I have seen that can help to pump this thick viscous liquid even when it's still cold. So yes, when you're getting to 200, 500 liter fermentations, yes, having a bunch of small 25 liter drums like this is going to take a heck of a long time. So you get flow bins. A flow bin that's 1,000 liters on its own. You get your molasses in there, hook it onto a pump, and you pump it into your fermentation vessel where you want it. It looks to me like now the last bit is going to flow out on its own out of the small blue container. So what I then like to do is I take the warm water that I've already got warmed up inside my stainless steel bucket. I add it into this blue container, close the lid, and I shake it a bit up. Do it about 3 times to make sure I've got all the molasses that's still stuck inside to get it out. And that hot water also helps to dilute my molasses for the first time to get it nice and loose. Because if you use cold water, it gets more sticky. You don't want that initially. But as soon as you got that first bit diluted and it starts to get nice and loose, you can add cold water. I especially add cold water afterwards to bring down the temperature just before I want to pitch my yeast, so that I don't shock my yeast. But we'll get to the yeast a bit later. So this is just still normal tap water that I heated up over the stove. Because you are going to distill it, there's no need to really use a reverse osmosis water or distilled water. Normal tap water will just do the job fine. Alright, so I got my hot water in. Now I just like to shake it a bit, trying to make sure I've got all the angles. I do make sure the lid is on tightly, but as the hot water itself starts to expand on the heat inside, sometimes I do push out, so I don't want to turn it upside down just as of yet. So I'll just shake it around like this. You will see molasses, it's a very tricky business sometimes, but learning a few tricks of the trade, it makes it much easier. Alright, so let's see. I like to call this my first pour of diluted molasses, and that's how I also tend to measure how much time I need to rinse it still. So let's check the first one. It's still very black, so I know definitely there was still a lot of molasses still left, but that's no problem. Alright, let's check the second pour of diluted. It's starting to get almost like a dark red wine color, and I know, yes, it's definitely starting to get out, or the stuck molasses still inside is getting out. Like I said, normally about 3 rinses, then I'm happy. So let's see the third pour. This will be our last pour as well. Now you can see it's technically almost clear. So it shows me that all my sticky molasses inside has been dissolved now, and this drum is now clean, and I know I've got my maximum amount of molasses inside the blue drum. Alright, so I'm happy with this now. I'm going to pour in the last bit of hot water that's in a stainless steel bucket into here as well. Then I'm going to move everything inside the garage, because for me to add the rest of the water with the sugar calculations that I've done, it's going to get quite heavy, and I don't want to move it around then. I want to put it on the dolly trolley as well as onto a crate, so it's going to make it easier for pour out when the fermentation is done. So let me move everything inside, and I'll chat to you again. Cheers. Alright, so we're inside the garage now. Got my drum already, stirred it a few times. I still need to add one more bucket of water to get my total up to about 80 to 85 liters of fermentation. I like to get more water in. I need to look at the yeast to first find out what is the alcohol tolerance and what is the sugar concentration tolerance, and also where is the pH going to be best suited for this specific yeast that I'm using. So for this yeast that I'm using, I checked that I've got a 16% alcohol tolerance, and I've got about a 27 to a 30 Brix tolerance as well. So I need to make sure that my total sugar content inside is not more than 30 Brix. If it is more than 30 Brix, I need to dilute with more water. It means that I might not have as much alcohol, or let's say the alcohol percentage will be lower, but the amount of alcohol that I will get out, my absolute alcohol milliliters amount, will still be the same. That's just to help the yeast, that a yeast doesn't overstress, that you want to create unnecessary flavors that you do not want in the end. So for now, I'm hydrating my yeast. I've got here normal plain water. I don't want to use the fermentation water or the fermentation mash at the moment, or wash, because I don't want the yeast to start activate and start to ferment and actually make a yeast bomb itself. I just want to get it nice and wet and gooey, so that when I do add it inside, it's already got that lower stress, that it's already hydrated, and it can just start to ferment. So yes, I've got my yeast measured out. I measured out about 80 grams of yeast, as I know I'm going to have about 80 to 85 liters of fermentation. For a small fermentation like that, that is still fine. You do not have to be specific. I know with larger fermentations you tend to use a bit lesser yeast, but I want to make sure that things get going and my fermentation starts off well, so I'm going to add a bit more yeast than what's needed. This I will just give a nice stir with the hand, and I will just leave it standing here to let it hydrate as I start my sugar reading, my pH, and get everything ready to make a happy home for the yeast, so that when we kick it off, everything is good. Alright, things are looking good. I have taken my temperature reading. It's about 20 degrees Celsius. I'm quite happy with that. A bit on the low side, but I've got my quariometer, so we'll get to that now. I did measure the sugar content as well. I'm happy with the 30 Brix at the moment. It's on the edge of the yeast tolerance for sugar concentration, but I'm quite happy with it. I don't want to add more water than it's in already. I've ended up with 87 liters, so I'm getting to that point of that 15% headspace that I want to leave, so I'm going to keep it there. For temperature control, I'm using a stainless steel aquarium heater. It works wonders for me. I've got it with this normal, let's say, electrical socket that I actually use to seal it to make sure. Also got a small washer or rubber seal inside, and then as I tighten it here, it actually, now it's still loose, and if I tighten it more till there, it doesn't move at all, and it makes a perfect seal. Then I know that no air will come back in here and everything will still come out the middle through the bubbler as well. So I'm not going to insert it yet as of yet, because I still want to add my nutrients as well as my yeast. I am going to add the nutrients now, stir it with the drill again, make sure I've got good aeration as well, and then we'll add the yeast, and then we are basically done. Let's get things going. Adding your nutrients, or especially a dry powder, into your fermentation is good to keep on stirring and pour it slowly, because you don't want to add or create any lumps as you add. So I just add it slowly, keep on stirring, and then I know everything is going good, going well, no clumps or lumps that are forming, and I've got all the nutrients that goes in. For a molasses fermentation, especially a Treacle 3 molasses, you need a bit more nutrients, so I tend to add a bit more. I'm still going to keep it at the 80 or 1 ratio of 1 gram to 1 gram of nutrients to 1 gram of fermentation. So at the moment I am just adding 80 grams of nutrients as well. I've already got the 80 grams of yeast busy hydrating. Nutrients doesn't have to hydrate as your yeast, because it's only going to help as the yeast itself starts to activate and starts to attack the sugars and turn it into lovely alcohol, ethanol molecules that we want. Still going good. If you guys want to know more about how sugar gets converted into alcohol, check out my video of Back to Basics on fermentation. There I explain it very nicely. So at the moment I've got basically all my yeast in. I will then stir it with a drill to make sure I've got a bit more aeration in as well. And then the last bit is just to get my aquarium heater hooked up, get water in the bubbler, get my yeast in, close it up, and then we'll leave it. Got everything more or less set up. I forgot to tell you that I also checked my pH. Make sure I've got between a 5.5 and a 6.5 ratio or pH number. So I've settled for 6. I added potassium carbonate to bring up my pH, as it was low. I started with a 5.1, so I'm happy with that. So now it's just for the yeast, and then we'll get things going. The yeast itself does make a muck at the bottom, so I just tend to scoop out some of my fermentation, give it a juggle, and then empty it out until I know that all the yeast inside my measuring cylinder is out. Doesn't help you've got all those yeast ready and everything is stuck to your cylinder or your measuring jug at the bottom, but it does show that my yeast definitely got hydrated very well and it's getting nice and gooey, so it will have a very good start to my fermentation. There we go. I can see now my container is at least clean, so I know all my yeast that are hydrated is definitely inside. I'm going to give it a good stir with the drill, and then we'll get the lid on. So for my aquarium heater, I don't want it too low. So at the moment I just want it to go in and be underwater about there, or under the liquid. So if I see there is where I want it, so I'm going to pull out the cable until I'm happy. Then I know this is where I wanted the height of the cord. I don't want to be right at the bottom, just here on top, and it will keep my heat nice and constant. Just checking if the light is on. Yes, the light is on, and it is currently at 30 degrees Celsius. That's where I want it, as I know that yeast itself can tolerate that heat. So now I'm quite happy. Got my bubbler on, and I will fasten my bracket. So this is it that I have for you guys for today. This is my take on a molasses fermentation. Now it's just going to be a bit of cleanup, and hopefully a bit later I'm going to check if I've got some activity and also add it in the video. Thanks guys. Hey everyone, day 2. We started the fermentation yesterday. Things are going good. You can see that we got some nice activity on the bubbler. So just goes to show with the right preparations you can make any fermentation successful. Make that happy home for the yeast and it will go right off the bat. So this is all I have for you now. Until I see you guys again, remember to be awesome, to be kind, and be yourself. Cheers.